If you have wrestled with the question or even living out the idea of certain foods are good, certain foods are bad, I should eat certain foods and I shouldn't eat certain foods, and when I do eat certain foods, I'm doing well, or I'm not, then this episode is for you. I think we all it can be very easy to have a very tricky relationship with food when we've been just cultured and told that certain foods are good for us and certain ones are bad. So I just want to have a conversation on this podcast around that, around why we've made certain foods good or bad, the morality of it, but also how that has really impacted our relationship with food. And I share even my story of how that impacted me and my relationship with food and my struggles with emotional eating, barely eating, all those sort of things, and what that did for me and how I kind of found a little freedom for that. I'll also share 5 different steps for you to kind of like analyze what good food and bad food is to you and why and what that's doing for you, and really to find some clarity there. But then I also share, which I really want you to listen to my heart on the episode around this, that the reason why I went to coaching is not just my experience, but I knew other women also had a similar struggle. And I wanted to teach them and walk them through what I had maybe taken years to actually go through. And I want to do that for you. I do this for you. Yes, I love doing podcasts. I love doing challenges, but I do all of this so that I can support more women in finding their food freedom ultimately, right? So I share more about my 6-month mentorship one-on-one program that has some spots open now, and how you can even access a free special bonus for that when you book a clarity call this month. So listen in, book a clarity call so we could talk more about it. And can't wait to continue to support you in finding your version of food freedom. All right, talk to you soon. Hey, you're listening to the Sustainable Weight Loss Podcast, and I'm Brianna Wilkerson, your host. Over 7 years ago, I lost over 30 pounds after going on a dieting roller coaster for many, many years, and finally finding a way of eating, exercising, and living that supported my goals and also that led to sustainable weight loss. And ever since then, I have been longing, and I have been actually doing it and leading other women on the same journey, because my heart is to see every woman finally ditch diets, lose weight that lasts, and thrive in their whole health and life. And so the work I do as a coach, the work I do on this podcast, everything I do is to really serve women in that capacity. So on this podcast, you're going to find solo episodes, interviews, and all together, what are you going to find? You're going to find inspiration, encouragement, and a space where you can feel safe, supported, and empowered to go on your journey. So be sure to listen in, rate and review so other women can find this podcast, and also join my healthy and sustainable weight loss community to unpack these episodes and get more support. All right, ready? Let's dive on in. Hey friends, happy Tuesday. It is Bree here, and we're back for another episode of the More Than Your Weight podcast. And today I just really wanted to have a heart-to-heart with you and just talk about this idea of good foods and bad foods. Because I think what we believe to be good or bad about things, but specifically about food, is really governing our choices around our health, around nutrition, around diets, around the scale, around weight, all these different things. And I really just wanted to have a space to really address a few things, but also share some personal thoughts and to encourage you to ultimately ask yourself, why are you thinking certain foods are good or bad? And what is that doing for you? Like, what is that leading to in your life? What is that leading to you in your health? Okay. And, if you want to go deeper into this idea that what we think and feel about food is connected to other areas of, of our own food freedom, of our health, I definitely want you to, check out my food freedom journal if you haven't yet and work through that. But please book a clarity call with me, and I'll talk more about that at the end. But that is a space where we can talk one-on-one about how this may be impacting you, what kind of support you want to break through that, like what's your goal, your vision, and how I can uniquely support you in getting there. All right. So, I was doing this workshop with a great friend, Maria Maxey, on last week, and there was some other great speakers on there, and, this concept of good and bad food came up. And I love how Maria pointed out that, it's a matter of we've made food moral. It comes from this Puritan era. But even in general, like morality and moral code, we all have labeled certain things as good or bad, that society has labeled good or bad, or that we ourselves have labeled as good as bad. And we've labeled certain foods as good foods and certain foods as bad foods. Right, we just have. And many of us, that may be a different, like what is good and what is bad may be different. So for some people who don't eat dairy, they might think that's a bad food. Or some people who don't eat peas or whatever it is, I don't know, it is, or don't eat, processed foods, right? And what happens when you label certain foods good or bad? And I'm not even necessarily going to tell you what you think. You should just go ahead and make your own list of what you think is good or bad. But what happens when you do that is whenever you find yourself, or maybe even other people, but you find yourself specifically eating, quote unquote, the foods on the good list, you tell yourself, good job. I'm doing what I should be doing. I'm doing what I'm expected to be doing, and I'm doing what's going to help me do X, Y, and Z. Now, the opposite is true. If you find yourself eating foods on the bad list, you could easily feel shame. You could easily feel guilt. You can easily feel not just shame. Guilt is, again, a little bit more of like I'm doing something bad, but shame is like I am bad. And we can make our interactions with food reflect ourselves as good or bad, as acceptable or not acceptable, as worthy and not worthy. And I just think if we're not careful of when we make this good or bad list, and we interact with this good or bad list, we can really put ourselves in a corner and really put ourselves in almost what we call like a timeout, like what we did for kids, right? Because we've been bad. We ate bad food, so we've been bad. We ate good food, so we can come out of timeout. And I just think you just got to really ask yourself, have you done that before? Have you put yourself in an imaginary timeout for eating these bad foods or whatever bad foods you labeled? And really, what did that actually do for you? Now, for our kids, hopefully timeout shows them like, okay, well, every time I do this, like, that's not good. That's not like I shouldn't be doing this. And so timeout shows me, okay, there's a consequence for it. But like there are things that are probably not good to do and not, some things that are better to do. But with food, sweetie, I got to tell you, like there's no good and bad food. Now, there are foods that are more nutritious and advantageous for our bodies, will provide more nutrient, more energy. But that does not mean that we can't eat those other foods, right? There's many reasons why we eat. And I was talking about this on the workshop. We eat for celebration, like we just eat to celebrate things, or we eat for comfort, or we eat because we're craving something, and not necessarily physical craving, but craving other things in our life. What I call primary food, or what the school I went to calls primary food, and it shows up in us wanting to go to food for those things. And I just think if we're not careful, yes, we could figure out why we're eating. And, even tonight on this emotional eating webinar, we're going to talk more about like those triggers, that what may be causing you to eat food out of cravings or comfort, or even out of celebration, whatever. But I just think, let's just be honest and talk about that. The fact that every time that we label a certain food as good or bad, and we eat that bad food, we make ourselves to be bad. We make ourselves to be wrong. We make ourselves to be guilty and ashamed of doing it. And let me tell you, if you want food freedom, if you want to break free from emotional eating, you need to get rid of shame and guilt. You need to stop labeling certain foods as good or bad. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, right? There's been things ingrained in us, specifically around diet culture, or maybe because things were said to us or whatever, that we have for years, maybe even decades, believed that certain foods are good and bad and we can't eat those or can't eat those often. And so it's going to take deep work. It's going to take time. It's going to take being honest. It's going to take some vulnerability. It's going to take some grief. It's going to take some anger. It's going to take some forgiveness to really move forward. But if you want to feel free around food, if you want to be able to enjoy more nutritious foods, or ones that aren't as nutritious, and not feel any sort of like morality around it, not feel good or bad about it, then you're going to really need to take the time to do it and be honest with yourself and really go on a journey where you allow yourself to rewrite those beliefs that are not serving you around food. This was a key part of my journey and the key part of the work that I do with clients. I started this coaching business nearly 6 years ago because I also personally understood what it was like to label certain foods as good or bad, to label certain foods as bad and then feel like I deprived myself of them, even though I wanted some of them every now and then to over-consume them, or actually at one point barely consume any food, and then at one point over-consume them and gain back weight and feel ashamed, feel guilt, and feel like I was wrong. I wasn't worthy of belonging. I wasn't worthy of this and X, Y, and Z. And I understand. And everyone feels differently, but I remember, and I can remember those feelings of being in that dark place, those feelings of shame and guilt, those feelings of wanting to change and break through my cycle of emotional eating and just feeling stuck and feeling hopeless, feeling like maybe this is just who I am. And I was there for a while, but then I remember those feelings and those realizations and those some big moments, but small moments of choosing to believe differently, of choosing to believe that my worth wasn't in my weight or my work or anything that I was doing, choosing to believe that I had value regardless of my size, never changed, choosing to believe that no matter what food I ate, I was loved and I belonged and I was cared for, choosing to believe that if people didn't think that, then they weren't actually my friends. They didn't actually love or care for me. And, I think it's very easy, for us to look for that external validation from people. But what's interesting? I don't actually talk about this, but interesting with my dating experience and my now husband is I just remember getting to a point personally where I was like, God, I don't want to date anyone or engage in any of that until I truly believe, one, that you love me and you value me, but also until I love and value myself in multiple ways, not just in how I look. And until that happens, I just can't engage in it. Because when I do get in a relationship, I do not want to constantly be looking to that person to make me feel like I'm worthy or that I belong and that I'm worthy of love. All right? And I did that. And so me and my husband were friends for a while. Then eventually we started dating. And I just think I just still was constantly taken aback that he loved me at one of my, he loved me at one of my heaviest weights. But I think it didn't matter to me. It's like, I recognized that if he didn't, then he wasn't the one for me. Because throughout your life and your relationship, your body is going to change. And if you cannot be with a partner or even have family and friends who love you and care for you who you are, if they don't, then you can't always separate yourself from certain people, but then you just need to just not be around them as much, or just stop searching for them for external validation. So what I'm trying to say is that I did some deeper internal validation work, personally, but from a source that created me, from God who created me, who said all these beautiful things about me. And so then I was able to engage in other relationships and other things and not need them to validate me, not need them to tell me I'm worthy, not need them to tell me I'm eating good or bad, And so, it's interesting. Valentine's Day just happened. So I think we talk a lot about love, and we talk a lot about self-love in this world, and we talk a lot about loving who you are. But the reality is if you need to get to a place where you choose to love your body, choose to love who you are, no matter what size, shape, or scale number you're at. And that may take a while. And I'm not saying don't engage in relationships until then, but I'm just saying if we're not careful, we're going to be constantly looking to the world or other people to tell us if we're doing a good job or bad job in our relationship with food, our body, and everything in life. And we just need to stop that. And so I think we make this conversation on good food, bad food, health, food freedom, all that sort of thing, just about that, but it's a bigger thing. It's a bigger issue that we need to explore. And in my journey, that's finding that peace with myself. And that's why I often talk about peace with food, your body, and yourself. Finding that peace with myself, then trickle down to my relationship with body, then trickle down to my relationship with food. And it took years, it took months, it took a couple years to really like actively, slowly live that out. But then I guess I got to a place where I was free and felt victory. And it's not to say I'm not tempted to believe there are times where certain foods are good or bad. I am tempted the same way all the time. How I eat now pregnant is different than and even with a kid, it is different than a couple years ago. But I think it's actually been more freeing because I'm not labeling certain foods as good or bad or off limits anymore. I do think there's a time and place to try certain things where you're saying no to certain foods for a while if it's in the right context. But I think for many of us, if you're listening to this and if you feel like you want food freedom, I don't think you should do that because I think you really need to do this deeper work. All right. So, and I'm on this journey too. I'm always constantly picking up thoughts and stuff where I'm like, why are you labeling this good or bad? Why are you judging yourself here? No, remember, you're free. Remember, you're loved. Remember, you're cared for. Like, you don't need to let this be anything it's not. And so that's why I started my business 6+ years ago, is because I knew what it was like to feel hopeless and discouraged, but I knew what freedom and victory felt like. And I knew I wasn't the only woman struggling with the same thing. And so I've made it my mission to help women find peace with food, feel confident in their body, and develop healthy habits that will help them reach their goals. And let it all be more than about their weight. Let it all be more than about how they look and how much they weigh on this scale, which literally weight is just a gravity mass thing. Like, we don't need to be worrying about, like, when did weight dictate our worth, right? This is even like, I'm working on finishing up my first book that actually will probably launch more in the fall. I'm not going to stress out about getting it done before the second baby comes. Nope. I want to take time with it. I want it to go well. And I'm just on this journey of really saying that we need to stop defining our worth, our value in these areas of food and body and our weight and all this sort of stuff, because we are worth more than the scale will ever say. We're worth so much more. You're worth so much more than the scale will ever say, sweet friend. Okay? So I really want to encourage you to just take a moment this week and just ask yourself, take 5-10 minutes and ask yourself, like, what foods am I labeling as good and bad? Make a list of them. And then just ask yourself why. Why are those foods good or bad? Then keep asking yourself why. And how do I feel when I eat those good or bad foods? And why? And can I choose, are those feelings helping me? If not, can I choose to believe different? And what does believing different look like? All right, so make the good and bad list. Why are you labeling those foods good and bad? What happens when you eat those good or bad foods? And how is that serving you, like your body and your mind when you do that? And then is there a different belief that you can have around it? I guess that's like a 5-step process. I'll repeat it again. Make the good and bad food list. Why are you labeling it as good or bad? What happens when you eat those good or bad foods? Like, how do you feel and act? Is that feeling and action actually helping you or moved forward in your life? Or is it like keeping you stuck? And is there another action? Is there another belief? Is there another thought that you need to be thinking? Okay. And these questions, this process of reflection and getting deeper into the mindset and then shifting our actions is work that I do with my clients. You'll get a taste of that work tomorrow as we're focusing a little bit more on emotions and tonight, emotions and emotional eating in my emotional eating breakthrough webinar that's live tonight. And then the replay is available for a few days and you'll get a taste of that. But one thing I've heard my clients say time after time is that when they have space to do that in a one-on-one setting, over a time period where they're not feeling rushed, where they can actually work through it, there's a lot more breakthrough out of it. There's a lot more peace. I've had someone who did my food freedom boot camp last fall, who's just constantly, we keep in touch and just constantly tells me like just how free she is when she made a plan to eat a certain way this week and she doesn't do it, and she doesn't beat herself up about it anymore, and just all these different things. And I just am like, this is absolutely amazing. I am so grateful to have been in her life to help her through that. All right. So yes, I do these free challenges, I do these webinars, I do these podcasts, and and I think for many people, that's what they need. That's all you may need. But I think for some of you listening, you need that next step. You need someone to guide you. You need someone to encourage you, someone to point out things that you may not necessarily see, someone who's been there and who can walk you through shifting your mindset, and shifting your habits around food, your body, yourself, and your health. And I would love to be that person to journey with you. I am opening up a few one-on-one spots on my client roster, I guess, this month, to really support women for the next 6 months in a powerful way. To really, I'm a very holistic in nature. And so we do look at the mind, body, and soul. We look at our mindset, our thoughts, our beliefs, and we work on how we can shift that, not just in food or our health, like other areas of our life. And then we look at how we could practically take care of our body, but also soul, like that life piece where you are so much more than what you weigh, and you are so much more than just your health. All these other areas of your life, your physical, your relationships, spirituality, your purpose, career, all those things, they feed you. They bring you joy, they bring you nourishment. And so we need to pay attention to that as well. And so we look at that mind, body, soul, and through 6 months together, we can really do some deep work in that and find a lot of breakthrough. And in my 6-month mentorship, I'll link all the PDF with all the details in here. It's very customized towards your experience. So you're not necessarily going to I do have you're going to get some bonus programs that I have and that we could go through if you want, but it's not like you have to do this week, or it's just really you lead the process. You guide the process. Yes, we have a plan, but if you come to a coaching session and you're like, this is really what I'm wrestling with today, we're going to help you deal with that. And then I'm going to say, hey, this resource might be helpful. This is your action step. And so, yeah, I love group programs. I love courses, but I personally have done one-on-one coaching for so long because of that. Because I actually am a really good learner. I actually am someone who will always take a course and whatever, but I need someone to help me customize it for me in my life. And so there are coaching calls, bi-weekly coaching calls. There's a planning intensive. There's unlimited support in between. That's key because that's going to help you as you implement all this stuff and try to live your life. And then, of course, you get bonuses. You'll get access to my 30-day Healthy Habits Jumpstart that focuses on some foundational habits with tips and resources. You'll get access to my Food Freedom Bootcamp to really help you with that mindset piece. And then you'll get access to my 20-plus courses in my Client-Based Academy, which has even more in-depth trainings and tools and tips around different areas that can be impacting you in your health. And what's cool about it is that you can go through those at any point, but I could also guide you and say, this is the best one for you to do this week if you want to do some extra work. But really the coaching part is really the best work that you should engage in. And then as a special bonus, I'll mention this on my webinar tonight, but I just wanted to mention it because you podcasts are also fam, right? Is that for anyone who books a clarity call, again, this is just the free complimentary clarity call to help you get clear on whether or not this program is for you, and actually specifically for me to share how I can help you through my 6-month mentorship program, coaching and mentorship program. For anyone who books a clarity call this month in February and decides to go forward with the 6-month program within a few days after our call, you'll get access. Each of you will get my Health Breakthrough Kit. This is a kit where just some additional resources for you. So I am an essential oils advocate and have seen them shift my health, my emotions, and my mind in multiple areas. And they're just such a great tool. So I'm going to be giving you kind of a sample starter kit to really help you. And we can customize that towards where you're at. And then my Whole 30 e-course, I put this 40-day e-course together, the very early parts of my business. For those who are looking just to see, again, this is something that we could discern together when it's the right time for you to do, but it's just something to help you figure out which foods serve your body, which foods don't. That is the point of that. It's not about losing weight. It's not about saying certain foods are good or bad. It's elimination protocol to just help you think through and see and experiment. And I think that's key, because that can help you customize it. I remember when I did my first Whole30, I realized when I have a lot of dairy and gluten, I don't feel as good. I have more gas and all that. So I just don't have that as much in my life. I do have it, but I just don't. And well, there's some people who are like, I was fine with that. Okay, great. Then you're fine with it, right? So it's not about good or bad food. It's about figuring out what works for you. And obviously, again, I can guide you whether or not and when that is a good experience. So you'll get access to that health breakthrough kit, essential oils, and that Whole30 e-course if you decide to go forward in the program. But you must book that clarity call this month, for the month of February, if you want to get access to that kit, if you do go forward with my one-on-one program. And if you can't find a time on my calendar that works for you in the month of February, please email me or message me on Facebook, and so that I can support you and we can figure out a customized time off the books, but off the calendar that will work for us both. Okay, so I guess your homework is do that 5-step process around good foods, bad foods. If emotional eating is something that you have wrestled with and been wrestling with in your life, join me for that free webinar tonight. But I'm really going to say, if you're a one-on-one client, you'll have access to the webinar. So don't freak out. I think you need to book a one-on-one call. If you've been listening, either just this is the first episode or podcast, and you just feel your heart saying, I just need to at least talk with Brianna and just figure out what is next for me, what kind of support I need, and see if she's a fit or not. Book that complimentary clarity call for this month. And then if you decide to go forward with it, you'll have access to my breakthrough kit. Okay. I'm grateful for you. I love doing these. And I actually kind of love this season right now for the next few months of just doing solo episodes. So I can teach you things, but give you heart to hearts and just give you my thoughts. And I'm excited to bring back guests. We will be having guests more when I'm going to be on maternity leave. We'll bring back some guests. So I already have some lined up and they're going to be amazing. But it has been sweet to kind of talk to you. All right. So be sure to make that good food, bad list, sign up for the webinar, but book that clarity call. We could even do that good and bad food list together on that clarity call, but book that clarity call. I would love to speak with you. And as always, if this has blessed you, feel free to share the episode with someone. Reviews are very powerful and great, and they help more women see it. So, okay, grateful for you, and I will hopefully see you on the webinar tonight, but also hopefully see you on a clarity call soon. Friend, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it just opened your mind up to this question of what is good food, what's bad food for you, and why, and what it's really doing for you. So make sure you do that exercise and make sure you share it with us, whether in the Facebook group, the More Than Your Weight Women's Community, you share with me on Instagram at Madewell345, and I would just love to hear what your answers are to that. But also, please make sure that you join the webinar tonight if you're listening, the emotional eating webinar, because it's going to be a great space to unpack specifically how we can break through emotional eating. But please book that clarity call. If you feel a nudging in your heart and your soul that you're ready to get some other support and get clear on what that may be for you and how I can support you, please book that clarity call for sometime this month so I can support you in finding your version of food freedom and living out your more than your weight journey over the next 6 months. All right. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next episode. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Sustainable Weight Loss Podcast. I hope you're leaving supported, empowered, encouraged, inspired to go off and really do the things that you know in your heart you need to do and think, right? Because it's not just about what you do, it's how you think and how you feel to really reach your goals and sustain that weight loss. Again, for more support, join us in the Healthy and Sustainable Weight Loss community on Facebook. This is a space where you can really be safe, supported, and empowered through your journey. Just go to madewell345.com/community and you'll be right there, or click the link below. Again, so grateful you're here. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you'll not miss an episode and so that other women can find this podcast. All right, see you on the next episode.